far as my memory will serve me, it started off as a style, and for about maybe a month or a month and a half. And then he realized a style was too confining, it was too short. Then he realized that the combat is usually geared under certain principles that you would follow and certain concepts you would go. So he said, JKD is more of a concept, and it should be constantly researched. It's kind of like, I refer to it as research and development, and that you would research different fighting arts, which he did extensively. That's why I find it very humorous now that people want to go back to the original. Now the original JKD is what they refer to as Jun Fan Gung Fu. That has certain stances, certain type of footwork, certain type of kicks, which was the basis for what he called at that time Jeet Kune Do. But Jeet Kune Do, as he said, I have not invented a new style or a method of training, whether it be Chinese, Japanese, Okinawan, Korean, or whatever. He says, these are just a way so I can learn about life and about combat in general, because life is combat, as he used to say. So in short, it really isn't a style. And when we practice a lot, we did a lot of research. He said, let's try this out. Let's say if this is true. So we worked different things from the trapping, from the punching range to the kicking range to standing grappling and the ground grappling to find out what would work for him. Then he realized also that what worked for him didn't work for me. But he was really into the research. He found every book at that time, of every known existing fighting style at that time. So it's really not a style, it's kind of a vehicle so that we can inspect ourselves and see what works for us, but knowing again what works for us and possibly our students may not work for another student. It would be like what Magic Johnson can do with a basketball. There are a lot of basketball players who even have 2 or 3 or 4 or 5 or 10 years experience cannot do, because we're limited by our attributes. There are a lot of things he did for like countering the rear round kick or the front round kick that a lot of people can't do, because they don't have his neurological system for the backup. Or his awareness, which he could spot the kick or the punch and usually counter a round kick with a jab. A lot of people can't do that because they don't have his awareness, and they certainly don't have his reaction time, so that you had to possibly come as close to that as what we would call economy of motion, but it might not be exactly like the way he did it. So he would modify things for him that would work for a particular student. We're all given different attributes, God-given attributes. Some are faster, some are slower, some have better flexibility. No matter how much you stretch, there'll always be a person that has more flexibility than you. Some people have obviously better mental capacity to understand different concepts and theories than other people. So we have a capacity in that respect. Some people have power, and although power can be developed, some people have it naturally because they have natural body levers. So our attributes, height is an attribute, size is an attribute, obviously. You know, what sometimes a big man can do, sometimes a small man will not be able to do. If a smaller man has as much power as a bigger man, it's because he has learned to utilize his body mechanics properly. So that as far as technique is concerned, it has to fit the individual. In basketball, everyone cannot dunk when they do a layup. They have to revert to something else. So what works for him may not work for another person. I think that's the key. I think the whole thing is, well, he took this from the Sun Ji. There was a book called the Sun Ji, and I don't know who exactly worded it, if it was Sun Ji himself or Mao Zedong. He says, absorb what is useful and reject what is useless, and add what is particularly your own skill to your own system. And then that's constant research. You're constantly researching, and you're going to constantly do that until the day if you stay in the martial art, until the day they close the coffin, because we're all different. As far as techniques are concerned, he realized immediately that some people were limited by their attributes. Therefore, he says, well, this person's going to have to research on his own. He definitely has to research on his own. He has to find out. No one can really tell you, because you know what works for you and what doesn't, whether it be grappling skills or whether it be punching and kicking skills. These people were limited because they didn't fully understand. He was always experimenting. He drew from many, many sources, like the front leg in traditional, when I say traditional thinking of that time period, we kick more like savate with our front leg. Let's say the front round kick, which he calls now tech, or he called it the hook kick, not a round kick. But the hook kick or the round kick, as he was using, was mainly like savate, but the rear leg is mainly like Muay Thai during that time period, because he borrowed the rear leg from the Muay Thai. And people want it set, but what works so efficiently at one time period, they have to realize might not work efficiently at another time period. It's just like trench warfare in World War I worked very efficient. That would not work here in 1994 with the planes we have and all the different type of guided missiles. It would be useless to dig 10 trenches and have a front line, and it'd be obsolete. So you have to, I think what they haven't realized is that martial art progresses, and the martial art here in 1994 is highly more educated than the martial artists of 1960, and he's more open, and he's seen more. And that's what people don't understand. They want to have it exactly like Bruce Lee had it in 1965 or 66 or 67 or 68, 69, and it can't be, because the level of martial art has gone up. They, in the 60s, they never knew what a Muay Thai round kick was, so they didn't even know how to defend against it. People who were very, very good at the kicking and punching range have never experienced the grappling range. So when grappling came out, I think some person with just even average skills in grappling would offset a lot of what we call traditional people who train in what we call straight karate system, because they weren't educated to it. And if you're not educated to it, so these people that advocate being original the way Sifu Bruce did it at that time, they don't understand his particular concept. He often told me the Jeet Kune Do in 1964, because at that time it was 1964. He said it will be different in 1965 and 66 and 67. I saw that with him. There was a different Bruce Lee in 1967, 68, 69. Different approaches to training had changed. Sometimes what I've noticed and what I advocate sometimes is equally important as the technique is the way people train, or the training apparatus. That sometimes made the difference. So we're looking at the teaching progression, we're looking at the teaching method. All these things are important, just as important as the technique. And that's what he changed. Sometimes everybody kicks. Most martial artists kick, or martial arts systems kick. But the way you train the kick, like the way they train the kick in Muay Thai, that's something that is unique to Muay Thai. Even the training equipment that they use is unique. The way they kick in savate, that is unique to savate. And he's saying that we have to research what we like and what we think will improve ourselves. And I think that's why I think they don't realize that time marches on. You know, I came from an era where TV was, no one knew what TV was, and so the first TV in the block was like magic. A boy named Dougie said to me, "Come on over to my house, we have this thing called television." And I said, "What is television, Doug?" And he said, "This is a radio with a picture on it, just like in 20th Century Fox Theater." I said, "That's impossible, Doug." So we went to this house and we looked inside the house and we noticed that there wasn't any projection screen, because I used to run the projector for my 5th grade teacher. And I go, where's the projector? And he said, "Well, coming through the sky." See, that's a concept. See, now if people go back and say, "Well, we don't want television, we can use the projector and we just bring it in and plug it in," people, I think, have lost sight of what progress is. Progress has changed, and what was so useful in one time era may not be useful in another era, because we don't even conceive it. Some people are still learning how to run fast, and some people are using it as transportation, a horse, or a horse and buggy. You know, I'm trying to say that at every time, every decade, maybe not even a decade, maybe every 5 years, the system has to change the community that's out there. You know, that's important. You know, whether it be in law enforcement, whether it be in military warfare, it changes. You can't fight World War I here in 1994. The equipment changes, the tactics changes, and so you got to keep up with like in any field of endeavor, you have to keep up with the latest thing that's out there. be on the cutting edge of whatever your field of endeavor is. Change, whether it be in clothing, fashion, is going to change. If you keep your tie long enough, it goes from a fat tie to a skinny tie, and it's the same way in martial art. I'm pretty sure that within the next decade, grappling will be the in thing. And everybody will be doing grappling, and probably somebody will go back to the kicking, punching, because they've overlooked the kicking and punching again. So I think it just goes around robin. Well, you know, Joe Louis is, in my opinion, is very talented. As far as the understanding of Jeet Kune Do and what Bruce Lee was trying to relate to different people, to be really honest, I don't know. To be really honest, I'm sure he knows something, but I don't know if he really understands the concept. If I were Joe Louis and I was one-time champion of what at that time was known as the contact or the full contact karate era, the concept of JKD, if you understood it, would be to promote the Joe Louis style, not to promote Jeet Kune Do. Because as he used to say, Jeet Kune Do is just a boat to get one across the river. Don't carry it on your back. You don't need it once you understand. And that would be the thing to promote his method rather than that. In other words, it would be like a person who admired Elvis Presley. We don't have to comb our hair like Elvis Presley. We don't have to dress like Elvis Presley. And we don't have to sing his songs that made him all the gold or platinum records that he made. So we have to do our own thing because we can't be that particular person. So to answer that in short, I think if he fully understood Jeet Kune Do, he doesn't have to carry it on his back. I myself don't like to carry it. That's why I use the word concept, because I'm using the concepts handed down to me, and I promote what is known as Jun Fang Gung Fu, which is the first root system or basic system that Bruce Lee originated here in the United States. And the concept is that we have to draw from many sources. It would be wrong to see something really good in another system and not draw from it, because it's like a house. You put into your house what you need to live by. No one can come and say, well, you put your television on the south wall, and the guy come in and say, no, the television should be on the west wall or the north wall, whatever. And you don't say you should put the sofa in front of the window. You arrange your house the way you want it. In martial arts, you arrange the house. The house is Jeet Kune Do. What you put into it and what you name it is something different. The name doesn't mean they have the same ability. I can name my son Babe Ruth, which is a very famous baseball player, right? But that doesn't mean, and it will not ensure me that he will have the same attributes of Babe Ruth or whatever the baseball player might be. And Jeet Kune Do is the same thing. So maybe I might be going around the question a little bit about Joe, but I think if he fully understands that, he wouldn't need to use the word Jeet Kune Do. All he has to say, this is the Joe Louis system of karate, or full contact karate, or kickboxing, whatever he would relate to say. At the time of Bruce Lee was alive, there was only 3 of us that were sanctioned by Bruce Lee to teach it. That was Taki Kimura, and James Lee, of course, passed away, and he was of Oakland, and myself. But people have made JKD without being sanctioned by the remaining 2. And they feel it's right, you know. And then if they produce good students, I'm sure that people will think it's right. You can't stop that, you know. In other words, but to me, and I could be wrong in this, I think if a person graduated from, let's say, University of California, but always wanted to be a graduate of Stanford University, and then say he was a graduate of Stanford University, and he's not, you know, I don't think he can say that. In martial art, it seems like you can do that, because I've seen it all over the United States. I've seen it in different parts of the United States where people have, without being sanctioned by Taki Kimura or myself, they've taken upon themselves to form different Jeet Kune Do organization, and they haven't been approved. And people say, well, then do they have to be approved? You know, that's why can't I just say I'm Jeet Kune Do? Bruce Lee said, you know, you don't need an organization, because that was his philosophy. See, so that I could see it's very controversial, you know, and people will gravitate to what they like. You know, it's really hard to dictate what, you know, that they should do this or not do this, and so it becomes a very, very delicate situation in some ways. Bruce Lee is very marketable, even here in 1994. And it's somehow, if you look at any martial art publication, you'll always see a Bruce Lee article or something on Bruce Lee or his picture. Even since 1973 when he passed away, he's still very marketable, and people like to maybe capitalize on that. I don't think it's because they want to have his philosophy passed on, or his teachings passed on, or his research passed on. I think it's just something very remarkable, and they see it as a way to maybe gain a level of finance. And there's nothing wrong in gaining finances, but it's doing it through an improper channel, I think. And it misleads the public. I've sanctioned by giving my people in Junfang Kung Fu a certificate, and I've signed it, stating that they and I feel that they are capable of passing on the art. And I feel it's that the most people I've given the certificate to are very capable of teaching it and passing on the understanding. Because this is where the path that he led me on, because when we were training, we always research and experience with different things we came in contact with from different types of way Western boxing trainers would teach. He researched Silat, which very few people at that time period even were into. He researched Thai boxing. He researched Savat. He researched different grappling methods, known and unknown methods. He bought every book he can find in martial art, and he put I won't say the style, but he took the basic essence of what he called martial arts from that particular system and incorporated it into his own personal fighting system, which he called Jeet Kune Do. And so I'm just doing exactly what I feel that he would have wanted me to do, and still teaching the original material that he taught me. In our class over here, we teach a lot of the original material that was handed down to me in the era of 64, 65, 66, 67, 68, 69, and 70. It's still being taught. A lot of people write about me saying I don't teach, but they have never come into the school and watched the class that teaches the so-called original material of Bruce Lee. And if you ask them to do some of the original thing, they have to realize too that the original material in 67 was quite different in 68 and in 69. Some of the different drills would change. We used to work a lot of punching on paper at one time period, newspaper. That sort of faded away, and we worked more on focus club and heavy bag type of approach, and what we referred to as foam arm shields, which was a football arm shields. We went more into kicking foam shields. At that time there were football foam shields, and there were what they call air foam shields, and we went more into kicking, and he developed drills for these particular equipment. So I'm just doing exactly what I feel that he would have wanted me to do if he was still alive. And that's a direction. And most of those people weren't into the research part. And I think I stated in my first book, he says, if you don't understand and join me in the research, you will not understand what Jeet Kune Do is all about. Jeet Kune Do is sometimes leaving the security of what you know best and learning from a person. It's pretty much like a college. The college president cannot be expected to teach every subject matter, from science to English to social studies to history. It's going to be different. There's very few college presidents could probably teach every class. So therefore, you, as Sifu Bruce used to tell me, you have to go to the experts in that field. If you want to learn how to box, you should go to a good boxing trainer. If you want to know how to grapple, you should go to someone who is efficient in that method. If you want to know how to use a staff, then you should go to the people who you think are the top in the staff fighting. If you want to go into weaponry, you should go to different people who you feel are very good in that particular weaponry art. This is research. And you have to know. In other words, if you just stay stagnant and say, well, this is the style, I'm not going to look at any other style. A good football coach, and I'm going to football to bring on a point, a good football coach, they scout the teams they're going to play. They have the third string and the second string run their particular plays and techniques at them so they can adjust to it. A lot of martial artists don't. In other words, I'll just use some names. We'll say style A, let's say they use straight, and they won't look at style B that, let's say, uses curving type of blows, whatever, because they feel that straight is better than curve. They're lacking because when they meet a person at curve, you have to be prepared for it. The military, they call it intelligence. We just didn't go in the Desert Storm and say, okay, we'll just take a couple of troops here on the east side and west side, and we'll just march down the desert. We'll take a couple planes here. That was all planned. You have to research. You have to have what they call understanding logistics. They have to know what the enemy is all about, or what are the possibilities and the different ways he can strike, and what do they do as opposed to what I do. And I think that's very, very important to understand in the martial arts. And that's what he led me to believe. He says, sometimes you can be in a predicament where you don't feel comfortable. I always tell my class the same story of a person that was in the military. He wasn't a very good wrestler, he wasn't very good in judo, and he wasn't good at boxing, and he wasn't good in karate. Those were the known fighting arts at that time. But one thing he could do, as soon as he jumped into the 8-foot water in a steep gym in Fort Campbell, Kentucky, nobody could beat him in the swimming pool. We were like out of our element, and he could drown everybody. And then I found out, I said, what martial arts did he train? He was a water polo player, and he would just put everybody's face down, and we couldn't handle it. See, that's an environment that you have to be educated. So if you didn't know anything about swimming or water polo or water fighting, then you should research, at least get into it so you can understand it. It's just like the service, military service. You can have the same army that comes out of basic training or advanced infantry school, but it's different. If you take that same group and you put them in the Arctic, you put them in the desert, and you put them in jungle terrain. It's 3 different things, so they have to adapt. So they should be educated to the different types of environment after or afterwards or before they go into the area in which they're going into. They have to be accustomed to it. And combat is not any different. And this is what he stressed. He says you have to understand. You have to go in the areas where you don't feel comfortable in, and that's hard. Because if you feel comfortable at the punching range and your opponent wants to play in the kicking range, it might throw you off, or vice versa. If you feel comfortable at the kicking, punching, and this person wants to grapple, and he happens to get you on the ground, then you're playing his game. In the same token, if you go to any third world country and they don't want to play the game of kicking and punching, and they want to go in more in a weaponry, then you should be educated in some form of weaponry. And if you were unfortunate enough to go to prison, they don't box, they don't do that karate stuff, that's all knife. So you should be educated in, I'm not advocating to go to prison. Okay, I'm trying to bring out a point here that is a different type of element, so you should be prepared to go in that. And that's what he stressed in all his philosophy. So I think, and I like to feel, and I think I know that I think I'm going in the right direction that he wanted, because I'm still holding fast to his principles and concepts. There's an element of the unknown, because the unknown, it's just like a boy going from what we call K to 6 here in the United States and going into the 7th and 8th grade. That's a frightening world for a boy who's in the 6th grade and going into a 7th and 8th grade situation. And it's the same thing when you graduated from junior high school and going into high school. It's kind of a frightening situation. So it's the unknown that they're afraid of. Even if they just did it among themselves and research different areas of combat or different styles, they would be doing the right thing. But sometimes to hold fast is something that would work for one individual may not really be the thing to do. And I think that's what you said is too. It's kind of not being sure, because we're all afraid of the unknown. I mean, we like to feel comfortable in everything we do, and sometimes you have to leave what I call the comfort zone and go out and explore new territories, even though you might again become a beginner. But I think that's where the fun is, when you become the beginner, because the world would be boring if you knew everything. I like to go out in a new territory, even though it might be frightening at the time, and you might feel like the beginner, because we're all beginners, and somebody will always have something that you don't have, and vice versa. You'll know something that person knows, and he'll know something you know. He'll have some skill that you don't have, and you'll always have skills that he doesn't have. So that comes out as a trade-off, and I think a mature martial artist sees this.